I guess I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and welcome everybody to our executive committee meeting for August 14th. And of course, we're participating by Zoom because of the emergency declaration. And so we'll have to, any votes we'll have to do by roll call. If for some reason I am cut out because of weather or what have you, then Art will assume the position of chair until I come back in. And we'll do the same thing tomorrow during our full board meeting. So the first thing I'd like to do is ask for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Nathan. Go ahead and approve those minutes. And my report is going to be short because we've got some business to do a little bit later, but I would just remark that I think this situation we find ourselves in, the Zooming and virtual connections obviously has impacted the way we operate as a board. I do think that there's actually a silver lining to it. I noticed that at our last board meeting, we had 14 out of 15 board members participating. So I thought that was really quite good. And I think it's something, if we get practiced at this, that will help us in the future have participation from across the state. So we won't have to necessarily travel to every board meeting. So I do think there's a silver lining there. And of course, there's the opportunity for the public to listen in on our meetings, should they choose to do so. The big challenge, of course, is that we have less opportunity to socialize, as is often the case when we meet in person and have downtime, you know, a break between business and so forth. So I think one of the things I want to think about together with you is how we can continue to socialize the board, especially those new members. And I believe that means that we've got to rely on the committees. And I think the opportunity exists within the committee meetings between our quarterly board meetings to do a lot more to socialize our new members and to socialize ourselves and stay in touch. And so I'm going to charge those committees with just staying active and making sure that they're welcoming our new members and that they're giving you know, attention to the business at hand that needs to be done at the committee level and reporting that to our board during these meetings. And I'll also note that the committees include members of both the foundation board and our staff. And so that's another way to kind of keep our connections going. Joe, did you want to add something?
It looks like Barry just joined us by phone.
Oh, okay. Welcome,
yeah,
Barry.
I did. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
We're just
I couldn't get into Zoom.
Yeah, we're just getting started and we've approved the minutes. And I was just giving a brief report, which you'll hear again tomorrow at some length.
Well, I heard your report.
Okay. And so I guess
like
the next thing I would ask for is the treasurer's report. Since Jennifer is not here, I guess, who's going to provide that, Joe?
Nathan?
Nathan, are you prepared to do a treasurer's report?
So I thought I was. I thought I had what I needed open, but now I'm not seeing it. So
Okay.
You want me to walk through it for the executive committee, Nathan?
yeah, that'd be great because I'll be prepared to provide that report tomorrow at the full board meeting.
Okay. Let me just get to the right spot here. Okay, there's two documents in your board report that I'll bring to your attention. The first is the usual kind of ledger of numbers that ends for last fiscal year, so ends June 30th, 2020. And the next one is the notes that accompany it from our CFO. So the facilities committee did meet, finance and marketing committee did meet. First, I'll cover the finances here. As you see, I'll just go all the way to the bottom. We ended up with a surplus of $400,000. That was because of the hiring freeze that was implemented last March. We did use, after the hiring freeze, certain amounts of money to buy materials such as personal protective equipment and cleaning materials and so forth. We also bought plexi for protection of public workers and other items. That really wasn't a lot of money, but as far as we know right now, those dollars are going to go back to the state to offset the COVID-19 response. However, that's not really the official word as of yet. The General Assembly meets next Tuesday, the 18th. I'm assuming sometime during the month, we'll learn more about revenue projections for the state, what's going to happen to that excess money, what's going to happen to our budget, hopefully remaining the same. And maybe we'll even hear something about our detailed planning dollars for VMNH Waynesboro, or maybe even get a projection as to how far down the line that might be delayed. So right now that's all up in the air. If we look at the end of the fiscal year, there are 3 footnotes, but I'll really bring up 4 points. The first is a very good positive. If you notice in footnote 1 in the income and expenses sheet, is that even though we lost over a quarter of the year to admission, we still ended the year ahead of budget. Kind of showed we were on our way to have a record year, maybe a near record year in terms of attendance, but that's such as it is. If we go to footnote number 2, it's restricted gifts from the foundation. The reason there's the big discrepancy of 19% is the foundation is still holding the money for the Gene S. Adams Education Pavilion. I've got a more deep report on it, but basically they're hanging on to that until the Department of General Services gives us a green light to get a contractor. So really what's happening now in the state is that they're going through the details. It doesn't really have anything to do with the design or the look of the proposed pavilion. And it's really what they're doing is they're looking at, everything from like exit signs to, rail height and those details. We've stayed in touch with our budget analyst at Department of Planning and Budget. Frankly said, it hasn't been a lot. There's just no information. We don't know how far they have left to go. So we're just expecting at any time that we'll get the approval. Before I get to number 3, I'll point out that the federal funds is at 8%, but that's kind of an artifact. That has to do with our IMLS grant, which is a reimbursement grant. So those are the funds that we used from the federal government to move and secure the rock core collection in the Douglas Avenue Annex. So even though it only looks like we got 8%, we only got 8% last fiscal year. So I'm basically saying we're in good shape. We're going to get what we were allotted. So
that's just because there's a lag and the rest is going to arrive in the next fiscal year. Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that makes sense. So we actually talked about it in terms of reporting. It might have been more wise to not put the full 82,401 down, because we knew that it wasn't all going to come. So,
right.
But we weren't really sure how to report that because we weren't sure how much was going to come in at what point. But that being said, the final report has been submitted, so we're good to go. The last note, you'll see that it's pretty much what we already talked about in terms of having 400,000 left over. We did pledge a total of 225 at the beginning, but that was because we didn't really know how long the pandemic was going to last. So we were hoping we were only going to give back about $225,000. As it turns out, the museum remained closed and we didn't spend the additional money. So that's how it ended up at $400,000. But nonetheless, we ended off in good shape. I mean, I just want to remind everyone that fiscal year 2019-20 was not a loss despite all the challenges that we faced, not the least of which was this pandemic. And I will also say just confidently that as we move forward, that this coming fiscal year will not be a loss either. It'll be modified, but it won't be a loss. I thought I had printed out minutes for the finance committee. I did not. So if you don't mind giving me 1 second. I'll just have to locate those. Here we go. Okay. I'll just walk through a couple of notes here on things that were discussed. We discussed most of what I just covered as terms of the finances go, and we also talked about revenue support. That is essentially we do have lost revenues from our family science festivals, and we don't anticipate certainly being able to run any this fall in their current format. And the same will go, I think, personally, my projection is, even though we'll be prepared, we don't think we'll be able to really run anything in the spring. So that's just something we have to consider. That being said, we've tried these drive-through shows. We did the reptile and dinosaur show. They met with some success. We plan to do some more. We're talking about bringing the dinosaur show up to Waynesboro. The one challenge was capacity. It's very time-consuming to move cars lined up through various slots. So what we're talking about is offering up time tickets. So you get a ticket and you can arrive at any point during an hour slot. So we just need to work on some of the logistics. It's a good way to reach out to the community and give them something to engage in, even if it doesn't have the same, financial and attendance impact that the in-person family festivals had. Something else I'll bring up, the foundation is updating the new Blackbaud fundraising software. It'll have expanded capabilities with donor communication and member communication. And going on a question that Roberto broached, we should be able to migrate all of our existing donor data and so forth into the new system without an issue. So that's a good thing. And other than that, there were a few other topics discussed in the Finance and Development and Marketing Committee, but those are going to be covered in other parts of today's agenda. So
Okay.
I'll turn it back over to you, Tom.
Yeah, sure. Are there questions about the treasurer's report?
I don't have any.
Just one remark, Joe, and I'm reading between the lines a little bit here, but in expenses, I noticed that some of the categories that were down were, of course, travel and subscriptions and staff training, and I suspect that largely was because of the COVID situation. But I'm concerned that our staff isn't having the opportunities to get development and subscribe and participate professionally. So I want to make sure that we can do that maybe remotely if there's an opportunity. Just want to keep an eye on that. Is that of concern to you too?
It's a point of interest to me. I would say I'm concerned at this point. You'll hear tomorrow, Christie's team has a number of opportunities coming up, mainly virtually, if not 100% virtually. I've been challenging some of the staff to cross-train because, frankly said, without having visitors to tend to and the busyness of the day-to-day, frankly said, is just not what it used to be. To take advantage of that time to learn what other people are doing in other parts of the museum and do so in a safe fashion. So there's even that in-house kind of professional development. The curators are signing up for virtual conferences and whatnot. So, and I'll think this through, and please feel free to ask that again at the full board tomorrow, and I can report on some other things, but I'll make a laundry list of various professional development opportunities that staff are doing their best to take advantage of given the circumstances.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'll probably bring that up again tomorrow so you can anticipate having a response to that. So if there are no further questions on the treasurer's report, Joe, I don't know if you have an some additional comments in your executive director's report. I know you covered some of those things in just in passing when you were talking about the finance committee and so forth, but there
Right. I won't repeat myself on these things, but just a couple of things. One, I'll just want to say that from my perch and just talking to people, the staff are doing well. They're being creative, they're being participatory. It was a little tough early on especially when the building was closed down and we were having scheduled entry to the building, but we've really gotten beyond that and everyone seems to be quite productive. And I hope that's becoming apparent in our virtual content that folks have been seeing. Utilities, one of the reasons that we decided to go Monday through Thursday was the thought that maybe we could reduce expenses on utilities by closing down exhibits in public areas. On those days we're closed to the public. That has worked out pretty well. So for instance, over the past couple of months, we've saved a few $1,000s per month on our electric bill. So that's just one example of, that bearing some fruit. As far as numbers served, yeah, it's about 100 people per weekend. It's not a lot. I mean, the big loss is going to be not being able to run these festivals. The last two festivals generated 3,700 people, and I don't have the number in front of me, but it generated tens of thousands of dollars in net profit for us. Patterson Foundation was about to fund us again, which was always great because we were able to pay for festival expenses out of the grant, and so every dollar that we made on a festival day was pure profit. So it wasn't just great impact, it was great sustainable impact. So Patterson has allowed us to switch this over to the development of further online resources. So we're talking about that looks like one of the areas that I'm personally involved in is developing a series of online tours that you can do from a classroom, you can do it from your house, you can do it anywhere that you have access to a tablet, laptop, or even a phone. But the idea is you go to a landing page on our upcoming new website, and there's going to be these three-dimensional tours. And each tour, while it has the same physical building and same physical exhibits, the called out artifacts and exhibits that you can encounter there with deeper information than what you can find in the galleries will be themed towards 5 Virginia Science SOLs. So it should be good for the general public touring and learning more about the museum and our artifacts, but it'll also be appropriate for teachers. And we're trying to work out that mechanism now, trying to be a little creative about how we use this with teachers as an augmented portion to our virtual reality offerings and so forth. And I'll also just let you know that Dr. Bassett, he starts August 31st. We just worked out the paperwork today. He's coming with a small grant to hit the ground running. And he'll be doing work on a local site on the Smith River right here in Martinsville with those funds. And then furthermore, it's looking good. It's not, no one signed on the dotted line, but there's a rather substantial amount of money that he looks like he will be granted from the Department of Historic Resources to survey sites that were, they span many different time periods, but they were apparently impacted in some, the sites were apparently impacted through flooding and so forth from 2 fairly recent major hurricanes and the storm events that happened inland. So Department of Historic Resources is making that a priority with some federal funding they received. And so they want to, they're going to give us a piece of it, and Hayden will make use of that for sure. And then the last bits here, Douglas Avenue, the state, and it's the same thing with the pavilion, which I mentioned before. The state is looking over the architect's plans for replacement of the roof. And once we get the go-ahead, we're already set. We've got everyone in place. They can get to work on that. And then we've already discussed at length VMH Waynesboro campus at various turns. We're in the budget, just no funds associated with it. The Waynesboro Advocacy Committee supplied a series of minutes in this board packet, so you can certainly review that. And we've been hard at work in a couple of different areas, making sure that we continue our communication to folks who would be interested in what we're doing. That is, the constituents, but also we're planning on meeting with constituents who would help us as we make presentations to them, help us maybe refine the exhibit narrative and perhaps even add to it. So that way we'll have a more robust product when we move to detailed planning as far as that exhibit narrative goes. And then the last bit that we're really starting to ramp up right now is we're using the last of the pre-planning money. We had roughly $10,000 left over, and we've hired a videographer to create a series of promotional videos that is going to have one overview that would last about 2 to 3 minutes that we can use online and social media, and then a series of maybe 3 or so 30-second videos that we'll promote on social media that will cover the educational impact, the economic development impact, and I'm of course now blanking on what the third topic is, but these will help keep the project, we think, out in front of people's attention, especially down the line when we go into a capital campaign. So that's the very brief version of my report, outside of the fact that the foundation board, it met this afternoon, and it was mostly reporting out. It was a virtual meeting. I will just let you know that I alerted them, as I want their further participation. I want their readiness to participate in reaccreditation towards the end of our strategic plan. So I've asked Tom and Art if we could make sure that we commit to forming an ad hoc committee for reaccreditation that would involve members of both boards. And we would begin that at the beginning of the fiscal year in 2023. And the other thing I challenged them on, because I think this is something that can really motivate them. Like, they seem to get a little excited that we actually hit goal for the pavilion. I want to keep that going. Once we get Douglas Avenue far enough along and somewhat stabilized, we can easily move the physical library. We already have other agencies that want to buy those compactors off of us if we decide we don't need those, so we don't have any problems there. And the idea then is that we can begin the process of developing a fundraising plan to develop a new early childhood area. So we already have the Hooker Furniture Discovery Reef. Of course, it's very small, but we can move all of those elements over to the library space, and we can then further populate that with other interactive early childhood exhibit experiences and so forth. So I gave them a heads up on that, and I just want them to get excited, and especially some of the newer ones did. They approached me after the meeting and basically said that they had some ideas that they want to share with me. So that was good. So just so you know, we're trying to get them motivated to do more. So
Yeah,
I'll turn it back over
I
to
think
you,
that's
Thomas,
really
for those
important,
questions.
engaging the foundation board. And
I'm sorry?
I think that's really important, engaging the foundation board, and especially the newer members, and in this fundraising as we look forward to other initiatives, including Waynesboro. So, and I'll just say I really appreciate what the staff and you have been doing, to be creating a presence on social media. I've really, as I think we had a conversation about in our last meeting, I've really enjoyed seeing Ben in Nature and listening to Adam Pritchett, and I think that all that good stuff is just raising the profile of the museum. So I'll say something to that effect again tomorrow.
Yeah, and please bring up the educators too. They've been creating the Museum Minute and some other programs that have been pretty well received.
I'll make a note to myself for that too.
No, I've thoroughly enjoyed Ben's work and Cal's contributions. I've sort of disappeared from social media until very recently, so I'm just now slowly catching up on all the work that everyone's been doing.
Joe, this is Barry.
Yes.
2 questions. One, Patrick Henry. I know that our former curator had a grant, and Patrick Henry is struggling, or Patrick Henry, the community college is struggling with the name, and just wondered if we're doing anything there.
Just to refresh everyone's memory, we never actually received that grant. We received a handshake from the Sons of the American Revolution. They were the ones that approached us and asked us if we would do the project to do a proper excavation and survey of Patrick Henry's Leatherwood site, which is very close to here, maybe 5 miles from our museum. We're in touch with their current president, who is our city attorney, Eric Monday, husband of former board member Monica Monday. So with the recruitment of Hayden Bassett, he was happy to hear that, because he basically is saying they still have interest in it. And it's just a little cloudy as to why the timeline is so vague. So we still have our finger on that pulse, Barry. I understand what you're talking about with the community college. I mean, Patrick Henry was a man and a governor, and the thing is, though, where in a way opportunity lies for this to be done correctly, Hayden's bit of his expertise was working with the archaeology of enslaved communities and taking great pains to involve the ancestors of those people in the process of learning more about these people. So I think we actually can turn this around 180 degrees and turn it into something that's a positive, where the ancestors can come and help us draw conclusions through their own lens of what had happened back then.
Well, Patrick Henry freed all of his slaves. He had 60 plus slaves, and he freed them all. He decided that slavery was immoral, and that they're struggling with the name, but I passed that information along to Jeff Hodges, the our vice president, and he's apparently going to use it.
Okay, I appreciate
Second,
that. Jerry. It's fascinating.
second thing that I had was the Family Science Festival model. Would you say a few words about that, Joe?
Yeah.
Is that
so,
the same thing as the dinosaur project, or what?
Yeah, so that's when we ran Dinosaur Festival, Reptile Festival, Space Festival, Ice Age Festival. So these drew the large crowds, 1,000 or more. So Ice Age would get around 1,000. Dinosaur Festival over 2 days would get around 3,200 people. And so that's that model there. So we run about 4 a year. We found that was the sweet spot. So that way we had regular festivals that people would look forward to, but we didn't oversaturate the market. So we still fully intend of reintroducing those when the time is right. I'm just offering up my opinion here, what I see. I don't think this is the COVID-19 committee, but I know what I hear, that they're talking about maybe in January or something like that, there will be a virus available, but realistically you have production, storage, transportation,
Vaccine.
administration,
Vaccine.
Pardon me?
Vaccine, not virus.
Did I say virus? Sorry. Yeah, the vaccine.
Yeah.
So we're not producing
It's
virus.
already available.
So
Yeah.
anyway, it's going to take a while before we have a population that is in a condition that I think we would be warranted to once again re-engage such size audiences, because in the ones that are indoor only, the people can get packed in here like sardines.
Absolutely. Well, so the Family Science Festival model includes all of them,
Yes.
all the festivals. Okay.
Yeah. So we're not calling.
You mentioned that in your evaluation.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We're not calling the drive-through festivals because we can only do so much with people in their cars. We didn't want to mislead people, so we just call them shows. So it seems to work so far.
Good.
Just to point out that we're at 4:30, so we're about halfway through the meeting. We do have a closed session coming up, and so if there aren't any further questions for Joe, what we're going to do, because we're doing this virtually, is read the language that we need to do to go to a closed session, and then I'm going to become the host, and we're going to drop off everybody who is not a member of the executive committee. We will hold our closed session, and then we will notify those people when we're done, and come back into the open session. And of course, none of this will be streamed on YouTube. So at this time, let me go ahead and read a motion for closed session. I move that the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History enter closed session for the annual performance review of the Executive Director pursuant to the personnel exemption in Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1. And I need a second.
I second that.
And we need to do a roll call vote, since this is our, any vote by Zoom we'll have to do by roll call. So who wants to handle the roll call?
I'll do it. So Tom?
Aye.
Art?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
Barry?
Well, but I don't think I can vote.
Well, yeah, I think you're as past president, you are a member of the executive committee or not?
I don't know. I'm a
little
member,
far-
but I think I'm not an official member.
I seem
I'll
to
have to look-
recall that Audrey said maybe he was ex officio from a couple meetings back.
Okay.
That memory
So
is
that-
resurfacing as well here.
Okay.
So I don't have a vote.
Nonetheless, it's unanimous.